Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us on our SAi Fellows C4 Cohort 4 Demo Day. Very excited to be here. Wasn't long ago, we were just planning this, and it's just exciting to finally hear all these amazing, wonderful projects. My name is Fanuel Muindi, and I'm the founder and chief of the STEM Advocacy Institute and the program director for the SAi Fellows Program. I want to start by just giving a thanks to funders for the program, STEM Peers, and the Burroughs Welcome Fund that made this possible. And as you know, getting funding for these things is hard, and so I'm thankful for their support so far. So just a quick thing here, building informal STEM programs is really, really hard. And this is the part of the reason why SAI was created. And our mission is to really be an incubator so that we can provide infrastructure, training, mentorship, and also importantly, funding to enable and accelerate the building of tools, research, and also programs. And the key here is that we can hopefully expand the pathways of access between science and society. And so over the years, we've had our residents work on diverse projects, and they are still working on quite a few of them. It's just exciting to see all the different connections that are being made and what they're building. The SAi Fellows Program was born in that pipeline as a way for us to provide access to that mentorship structure and so forth in a condensed fashion, importantly for graduate students and postdocs. 10 weeks, they get one-on-one mentorship, seed funding, and we're always looking to grow that amount. And also, we have so far about 11 alumni that are out there doing awesome things. And so we're going to be adding an additional 9 today. So I'm super excited about and seeing what amazing things they do after the program. So you will get to hear all their projects, okay? There are 9 phenomenal individuals. And I want to say, as I mentioned at the beginning, doing this is really hard. I want to say big thanks to them because they took time out of their busy schedules to do this. And they're doing something really hard. It's not easy. And so they're coming from across the country. I just am impressed with the diversity of institutions, diversity of ideas, diversity of approaches. And so that to me is super exciting to see. And I want to say thank you to all for taking a chance on us. And I'm hopefully we can keep in touch after the program is over. Big thanks to all our mentors as well. This wouldn't have been possible without them too. Matt, Pete, Brittany, Argo, Jessica, Prasha as well, who has been a mentor in the program, previous cohorts as well. You guys have just been a cornerstone, right? The one-on-one mentorship is key to this program. And so big thanks to you. Also thanks to Noel, our administrator, who has also just been in the background, making things work and helping build the financing and keeping things moving along the way. So Noel, thank you so much. Guest speakers as well. I really want to appreciate you for giving us your insights and your awesome programming that you do, Jean, Latasha, and excuse the misspelling there, Atabe, Benitez, and Niba Niral, who is one of our C3 fellows as well. And so with that, so our fellows will go one by one. They'll each about have 9 to 10 minutes to pitch their initiative, okay, and demo their work, and then a couple of minutes after that to for Q&A. So you can use the Q&A function to ask questions, or raise your hand if you want to ask the question out loud to the speaker. And so we're going to go through them one by one, and so hopefully this will be exciting and so forth for everybody. So we have an order. So the fellows know who is upcoming next. And so I'm gonna basically begin and I'll be calling them up one by one at that point. So first up is Gabriella. So Gabriella, I'm gonna give you the screen sharing capability here. If you give me a moment to stop my screen share. Okay. Okay, you wanna try that, Gabriella?
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see your screen. I can hear you well. Gabriella, welcome.
Thank you. Hi everyone, thank you so much for having us in the SAi Fellow Program and for attending. Thank you, Fanuel, and all the people that made this possible. It was a very great experience and I learned a lot from all of you. So today I'm going to present to you my project, which is a nonprofit organization called Crecer Conciencia, which in Spanish, it means to grow conscious with science. We are trying to nurture science engagement in the Latino community. My name is Gabriela Arango, and I'm the founder of Crecer Conciencia, and you can find me, you can find our information in Facebook and Twitter, as well as our webpage. So a little bit about myself. I'm a PhD student in the integrated biology at UC Berkeley, where I studied the diving adaptations to hypoxia tolerance in sea turtles. And you might ask then, why are you doing this? So there's an easy answer. If you look into the picture of the right, that's me. The first time I saw a leatherback. And you can see my face and I don't have words to express how amazing it felt. So I just want to show that to the future generations. I want to show how amazing nature is and how important science is to our everyday lives. So that's my why. About the co-founder, so his name is Elias Lopez, and he has a master in ecology. He loves inverts, and the same as me, he loves spending time in nature and wants to increase representation of science in the community. So we got together and we just found that there was a need for this and we got to work. So this is how Crecer Conciencia was founded. And our mission is to foster scientific curiosity in kids, environmental literacy in all ages. And we envision that we can inspire a scientific curiosity for a better world. So the problem statement is this. This is Sonoma County, the one in the arrow. And it's located about an hour north from San Francisco. And this is the land of the Pomo, the Miwok, and the Wapo tribes. And in there is 26% of Latinos that live in Sonoma County. And out of those Latinos, the population has been grown 230% in the past 25 years. And it is expected to reach 40% in 2050. So as you can see, the population is growing a lot. And not only that, but if you see the blue bars, the kids are the majority of the kids in Sonoma County. So Latino kids make up 42.6% of the total minors in the country. Furthermore, over 40% of adults are not proficient in English. And the graduation or education rate is 58.1% of Latinos have a high school diploma, and 10.9% have a bachelor's degree. And this is even scary. If you look at the arrow, I put where this, the Latinos, this is a graph that shows where the Latinos work in Sonoma County. And as you can see here at the very, very end, not even 2,000 Latinos work in science and engineering. So as you can see, it's a huge problem because we don't have any representation in the science and engineering. And as I will draw your attention that most of our Latino communities are service workers, which means are essential workers in these COVID times. So due to that, COVID has widened the gap, the educational gap, due to several societal factors, such as low income, access to technology and the internet, the language barrier that I previously stated, and that we tend to be essential workers and cannot physically help kids with school, even if they wanted to. So this has widened the gap during the coronavirus. So we kind of think that we have a solution. And we founded Crecer Conciencia as to build a bridge between the Latinos and the STEM education problem. And we start, before pandemic times, we start doing beach cleanups, ecosystem learning. We visit preserves where they're not easily accessible to the public unless there's like an education component to it. We did a lot of restoration restoration work with other organizations. We did the first sudden oak death BioBlitz in Spanish. And we also did the first Christmas bird count event in Spanish. So that was like 2 events that was available to Spanish speaking audiences for the very first time when we can still hold outings. So this is another component that we did. And
¿qué cosa nada pero no es un pez? ¿Qué cosa chifla pero no es un pájaro? ¿Qué cosa salta pero no es una rana? ¿Qué es? No sé. ¿Un delfín? Hoy vamos a hablar de delfines.
So that's just like a mini clip of the videos, educational videos that we created, all in Spanish with kids, and they tend to be very interactive, short videos, and the kids will do them themselves, and they were very excited to even do the research themselves. And then lastly, we also created some infographics that for social media outreach, and they tend to be very colorful and just like a little explanation of like sometimes an animal, sometimes like cool things about nature and yeah, mostly that. But now with coronavirus, that we cannot do any outings and we cannot shoot any videos with the kids, and the only thing we can do is the infographics, we needed something more. So we come up with the idea to have science kits. And the reason why we wanted to have science kit is because when I was little, I received one time a gift from Santa Claus. And I remember my mom being super mad that Santa Claus will buy me a microscope instead of buy me a doll. So that just shows how stereotypes can play sometimes a role in what you grow up to be. So I remember with my microscope, I would look at everything, but I didn't have anybody really to share my findings with. So for those science kits, I want to replicate the same experience of looking at the world through a different lens. And we are thinking about putting the foldscopes. So here is the foldscope, and that is just like a portable microscope, and providing like an annotation field notebook, where they can do activities, and just providing like an activity guidebook. We are thinking that we want to add value and a deeper learning understanding from these kids. And we want to, but most importantly, we want to build community for all to connect. Oops. So how do we build community? So we have the kids getting the microscopes and the science kits, and then they go and explore what's in there, and they do the activities, which will be mostly they can do it by themselves. And then they go and tell their parents, and then there will be like a component where they will have to get like a picture or something into the social media. So the parents will have to help them with updating those things. And once they connect that, there will be other parents connecting as well. So the parents will be connecting, and it will be like little bubbles that will be creating a community around those science kits. So the progress so far, we created a logic model, and we are in the process of finishing the lesson plans and putting the kids components. And for the logic model, we kind of divided between in-person and remote. And that was like the main thing, because some of those in-person activities can no longer be done. I think there is a question, but I cannot see the question.
Yeah, I'll read it to you at the end.
Okay. So where was I? Oh, so the competitor research. So I researched my competition, and there are several kids that are, despite being like good and sensationalist, they have different problems for what I was trying to accomplish. So first of all, and the more important, is the money. They're very expensive. Some of those kits are very expensive, and not only that, but they last for like a few activities, and that's it. And then they create like waste, and they are disposed out of it, and the kids forget about it. And then they're only in English, which is another part of the problem. And they have no contribution to the deeper understanding of science after doing like their job of like entertaining kids for a little bit. So despite some of them being like very innovative, they're not exactly a good fit for what I was trying to do. And so we are set to do those kits, and for the future directions, we want to finish the lesson plans and assemble 10 kits. So we're gonna pilot 10 kits first, and we have estimated that each kit is going to cost us between $15 to $20. And here on the right is a picture of one of the pages from the learning activities. So everything is going to be in Spanish, and it's going to try to be very interactive and visual for the kids to understand. And then once we have those assembled, then we will send to a target audience to test first. And then we are going to evaluate our results and then make changes for this second round. So it is our hope that this is going to be self-sustainable in the future, so we can reach an even wider audience. So the way that we're going to do it then sustainable is by taking donations through PayPal at Buy Me a Coffee. And the goal is to provide also low-income families with kits for free through the matching grant. So through the matching grant program, you're going to be given the option when you buy a kit, when you are interested to get a kit, you're going to be given the option to get a kit by either purchasing a kit or requesting a free kit. So if you want to purchase a kit, you're also going to be given the option that you want to buy a second kit to donate. And if you're requesting a free kit, then you're going to be placed in a waiting list. And then we will let you know when a kit becomes available once another person has donated a kit. So it's going to be like an anonymous donation grant program for other low-income families to get a kit for free. So with that, I'd like to take any questions, and I like to thank the SAi program, especially my mentor, Matt Witkins, because I learned a lot from him these past weeks, especially that money, it is important for what I wanted to do. My co-founder, Elias Lopez, which this work wouldn't be possible with all his help and support. And the families that go and support our events, because all the work that we do is for them, and by them attending, then I am just happy with the result. I am looking for collaborations and donations of any form. So I'm looking for donations of skill, time, and money. And I'm looking for collaborating in the web page design, marketing, branding, and social media. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Gabriela. The one comment we had here from Jessica is just definitely worth chatting. We had one of our fellows, C2 fellow, Danny Crane, that had developed one of the kits, Science in a Box. So definitely we'll look into connecting you with her. So that was a comment from Jessica. Question from Pete: how are you planning to get the word out to communities you want to be involved in? Have you thought about reaching out to Spanish immersion classrooms?
Well, first of all, we want to reach out to a small number. As we pilot this, we are just thinking about 10 families. So that would be just like some of the same 10 families that have gone to our events previously. So we have the contact information already. In the future, we did think about through this, one way to outreach will be reaching out to classrooms and reaching out through social media for other people that are not necessarily in Sonoma County. So if in the future this takes off as expected and more people donate kits, then we can even reach to wider places.
Great. And one question actually, what does crecer conciencia actually mean? That's a good question.
Crecer conciencia means, crecer means to grow, and conciencia is like a pun of words. So conciencia means together means with science, and if you separate conciencia means with conscious.
Fantastic. Gabriela, thank you so much. With that, we'll keep on moving, but stick with us. I'm sure some people may have some other questions, and I see a comment there from Pete. Hopefully you can see it as well in the chat.
Yes, so if I can just address that, we did think about another way to actually market this is to provide that bilingual component where in Spanish immersion kids can actually practice their Spanish and building community between like Hispanics and non-Hispanic people.
Great, thank you. All righty, so Noel, I'm not seeing Umi, so am I right? That's my list is moving off.
I think she's here.
She's here somewhere. Let's see. Could you make her co-host so she can present?
Yes.
Okay, so then DJ, you can hold tight.
Okay, I've made her a panelist.
Okay, and
But it won't let me make her a co-host.
oh, okay, let's see here. Hi, Umi, so hang on tight. I'll make you co-host. Okay, Umi, go ahead and share your slides.
It says it's disabled for me.
Oh, I see. Okay, 1 second. Try now. Okay, fantastic. Okay, just a quick intro. Umi was one of my mentees, so I'm excited to get for her to tell you about her project. Umi, go for it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Urmi, and I'm a postdoctoral fellow at Harvard Medical School. Today, I'll be talking about my initiative called SAi Extend, which we've been developing with the STEM Advocacy Institute since September. As you know, across the world, the scientific community communicates amongst each other in English. However, strangely, only 1/5 of the world's population speaks English. Now, there's a steep increase in the number of scientists from developing nations, and a huge majority of them do not speak English as a first language. This creates a language gap where non-native speakers from emerging developing countries are disparately affected because they cannot communicate their science at par with their English-speaking components. This is where SAi Extend comes in. Our mission is to bridge this gap. Our mission is to help non-native English-speaking scientists from developing nations at different stages of their careers communicate their science in English. This SAi Extend also aims to provide a platform that will facilitate discussions about graduate school, about the different problems of PhD life, various career options for PhD and postdocs, or anything else the community might find interesting. Before I go into the initiative, I want to introduce the founders of this initiative. This initiative was founded by me and my husband, and we are both postdocs currently postdocs at Harvard Medical School. We have been educated in India and also in the US. Our graduate degrees are from the US. And we are intimately familiar with the challenges that non-native speakers of English have communicating their research. And thus we believe that we are well positioned to bridge this language gap that prevents talented scientists from developing countries realize their full potential. The goals of SAi Extend are as follows. We want to help trainees at different stages of their careers with their oral presentation skills, help them write their manuscript, fellowship applications, etc. Help them communicating their job to non-scientists and in a need that is acute in this age. We also want to help them navigate various career landscapes with an advanced degree in science. Now, as scientists, as you know, that your communication needs are multifaceted. You need to write fellowship or applications. You need to present your work at seminars. You need to, some people are interested in popular science writing. You need to regularly write progress reports or give group meetings or write your paper for publication. SAi understands this multifaceted needs of the community, and we want to build a platform that addresses all these needs. Thus, the program structure we are thinking about is pretty versatile. So we are thinking about launching a course, which is Talk Science with Us. And this course will will introduce our trainees to the world of science communication. We want to supplement this by webinars, where we will have expert talks by experts in the field who will about various topics, and then this will also be supported by one-on-one mentoring. Let me go into each of these components into a little detail. So Talk Science with Us is a course that we have developed with SAi, the STEM Advocacy Institute, over the last 2 months, and our target audience is mostly PhD and postdoc researchers. This is a 6-session course, and we will spread it over 6 weeks. And right now we are planning over 6 Saturdays. We have already reached out to 3 schools, and we are confirmed, and one of those schools confirmed with us. So we are launching this course in January 2021 with the Indian Institute of Technology in Bombay, which is my husband's alma mater. And they have graciously agreed to host our course. And we are planning right now to hold this course over roughly 4 months at various schools. So here is a structure of the course. We will have 6 modules, and they will briefly, and our idea is to briefly introduce our students on science communication, help them writing a paper, grant, fellowship application, then speaking science, oral presentations or poster presentations, and finally tell them various storytelling methods. Our webinars will be mainly panel discussions with experts and students, and we are planning this every 4 months. Here, our trainees can listen to talks by scientists from diverse careers in science. They will learn about the different things that they can do with their advanced STEM degrees, and also how to apply for jobs in STEM. But we realize that webinars, some students might need a little more than participating in a panel. They might have customized needs. So to do that, we also have a component in the program that is one-on-one mentoring, and here they can get those individualized attention from scientists. And our topics will include navigating through graduate school, applying for higher studies, or navigating through tricky situations in one's graduate career, or any other discussions that they might want to hold in a safe and secure environment. Now, how will we do this? The logistics of the program, of course, we will have volunteer mentors, and our mentors will help us teach the course or help us design the course, and or volunteer to be panelists and one-on-one mentors. We also need partners in various institutes or universities. These are basically host schools that will let us teach our course at to their students, and we also need participants. As far as our trainees, what do they need? And this is my assumption in the logic model. Our assumption is that they have stable internet connection. Now, remember, this is a completely virtual platform because we want to reach out to audience across the globe. So it is essential that our trainees have a stable internet connection that will help them to live stream our sessions. However, our sessions will also be recorded and available to them later. And of course, our trainees need to have a lot of energy to do this kind of thing, because remember, they're doing this in addition to their day job, learning about science communication. Some of the future events we want to plan is thinking about science. We want to target a younger cohort of students in our future initiatives. So one is we want to target high schoolers and think science with them. We want to introduce what doing research is like as a scientist to high schooler and undergraduates. And one of our favorites is holding popular science workshops for younger students and PhD students. We also want to be available at SciExtend 24/7, where they can reach out to us through email and ask us specific questions that they might have. So here is a call for volunteers. If you're interested in science communication and you want to help scientists from developing nations, you want to help us deliver the course or design the course or be a panelist, be a one-on-one mentor, please get in touch with us. This is also a call for host institutions. We are looking for partners across the world that will help us reach out to students and be facilitators so that we can help them with their communication needs. We are in the early stages of launching our website, which is sciextend.org, where you can go and learn more about what we are doing. And please feel free to reach out to us at sciextend@gmail.com for specific questions, or if you're interested in working with us. So I think we are very excited about our program, and I thought this kind of summarizes my talk. So in a nutshell, what SciExtend wants to do, it wants to help non-native speakers, non-native English-speaking scientists communicate their science in English. To end, I would like to acknowledge the STEM Advocacy Institute for being an incubator for these ideas. I don't think we would have been able to come this far without the structured program that they provide. Special thanks to my mentor, Fanuel Muindi, for not only running this program, but also always asking me two questions. Who are you trying to reach, and how are you going to help them? Very specific questions that kind of helped me narrow down my idea of saving the world with SciExtend. And thanks to all the guest speakers and my fellow cohort mentees at Sci for creating this amazing platform for my idea. Thank you, and I'll be happy to take questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Umi. It was a pleasure working with you the past 10 weeks. Thank you for that. Are there any questions from the audience, and even the panelists as well? Feel free to ask away. And we have a time for one or two. Okay, let's see.
So I think the question is, how are we planning to get the word out to communities you want to be involved? Have you thought of reaching out to Spanish immersion classrooms? Yes, we are. We have not. We want to. So we only reached out to the people we knew who do not speak English. We come from India, where we don't speak. No, not everybody speaks English, or very technical English. So we have not reached out to Spanish immersion classrooms, but we would love to have a facilitator or a mediator that helps us know these communities and reach out to these communities and help them. So it would be great, Pete, if you can help us with this.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really good point. There's a lot of overlap between programs, and what we're seeing from SAi is we're trying to also link up projects so people can collaborate and coordinate. Together we're stronger, right? And I think sometimes we want to replicate things, but I think that connection is there. Question from Gabriela: is there more than one language spoken in India?
There are thousands of languages spoken in India, and I speak like 4, 3, and then English, 4, so total 4. So there are like thousands of languages spoken in India.
I guess the question there would be, do you imagine being able to kind of cater to all these groups, right? Given the multiple languages,
Yeah, so we are reaching out to institutes, which is kind of a place where all these kids come from different parts of the country, and that's like true around the world. So when we reach out to this institute, to the deans or department heads or professors, so they they are helping us reach out to these kids. So we are kind of bringing them under one umbrella, and that's how we plan to do this.
Got it, great. Okay, so I would like to keep moving. Thank you so much, Umi. Stick around. There'll be some more questions, I'm sure, in a little bit as well. So for everybody, just a quick note there. Two of the speakers so far have mentioned this idea of a logic model, right? And you will hear more and more of that as they present. This is something that we use intensely in the program, and the whole program is based on that, where they really are forced to think through, like, what's the problem? What are you trying to do? Who is it for, as Umi has mentioned? And that's my routine every time, is to ascertain what's the problem, solution, and who's it for, and what are you doing? And so I'd love to welcome DJ and take us through his logic on this program. DJ, welcome.
Okay. Let me get my slides pulled up. There we are. All right, cool. All right, hi everyone. My name's DJ Bradshaw. I am a 5th-year doctoral candidate at the Uniformed Services University, which is the federal government's medical and graduate arm. I kind of kept the title of my project here general because it's, as I'm going to explain it really evolved into much more than I originally anticipated when I applied to the program, which I think is exciting, but also kind of speaks to the challenge of science advocacy. So I've just kind of titled this my Neurotrauma Advocacy Initiative. And to kind of lay the groundwork of what that actually means. So I am a neuroscience PhD candidate. My research focuses on traumatic brain injury and more specifically ways to prevent traumatic brain injury. And because of that, the scientific society that I'm most closely aligned with is the National Neurotrauma Society. I've sat on a couple of their student committees. I go to their meetings every year. I think it's an absolutely wonderful small community of scientific researchers. So when I saw the SAi Fellowship come across my feed, it kind of felt like an amazing opportunity to merge two worlds. I've always been interested and passionate in doing scientific advocacy and outreach initiatives, and I kind of recognized a gap that the society I was most involved with had in that field. So we wanted to kind of jump into that together. So the problem we're kind of addressing is that neurotrauma, TBI, spinal cord injury, these are massive, massive problems. You see things all the time, commercials on TV and whatnot for various neurological disorders or even just diseases in general, cancer, the Alzheimer's through the Alzheimer's Foundation, various things that have a lot of press that are very prevalent problems in a way that traumatic brain injury and things like that aren't publicized the same way. Even though it is equally, if not more so, of a pervasive problem, it's a little bit more loosely defined and therefore not spoken about as readily. It also doesn't help that we have absolutely no therapeutic approaches to things like traumatic brain injury and very, very few for spinal cord injury, but people are getting hurt every single year and it causes really long-term, really debilitating things. And I think when I think about this problem on a grander scale, I think about a lot of misinformation, right? So I think a lot of folks are familiar with the idea of what a concussion is or what a brain injury is, but I don't think people in a meaningful way are informed to the degree that they should be, given that it's very, very likely that yourself or someone you're involved in at some point will encounter some kind of neurotrauma of some sort. So when I sat down to kind of craft this project, I wanted to say, how can we take the amazing work that people within the National Neurotrauma Society are doing and get it to a broader audience? And what I'd initially kind of pitched was a podcast series that talks with neurotrauma researchers and gets the idea out there. And what, thanks to my mentor, Pete, and then a couple of conversations with other fellows and Fanuel, we decided is that that's really not enough. So where the project kind of sits now is this multifaceted media approach to increase neurotrauma awareness. And what this really evolved into and what I'm excited about is the National Neurotrauma Society and I got together, we sat down and we said, how do we get information into people's hands in a meaningful way? And that's not a simple thing to do. I think any of the fellows who are going to present here today can speak to the problem of it's your issue, you care deeply about it, and then your nuclear circle cares deeply about this issue as well. But if that was the only target, then you wouldn't really have an issue, right? So you need to get that information to people that care about it. So what we wanted to develop was a program that could be used at really any stage and with any audience. So we got together and we sat down and we said, how do we create media-based materials that can come through the National Neurotrauma Society with the support, a lot of legwork by me and some support through SAi here is kind of how we got our wheels turning. So that folks who need it or want to inform themselves better on it have relatable access to materials around the issue of brain injury and neurotrauma. So what this evolved to past just a podcast thing was kind of this overall media swarm, right? So National Neurotrauma has a decent social media presence that we've been working on growing recently. And one of the big things we wanted to put together was these cohesive, simple to read, easy to follow, language that we all understand, infographics that individuals can read and engage with. And I was this close to having our first published one ready for everyone today, but we got to get the folks at NNS to sign it off, and I think it'll be ready next week. So I'm going to put it hopefully into some SAi material so folks can see it, but it looks really, really good. And essentially what we have here is you see the commercials all the time of like various scientific organizations that have big media presences. They put out these graphics that really catch your eye and you can see it. And we wanted to do the same thing, but on topics within neuroscience that folks would actually engage with, right? We don't just want to talk about like dense molecular biology things. I don't think that's very engaging. So what we did, and we can kind of see here at the bottom, is we started with 3 core concepts that cover some of this, the breadth of neuroscience issues within brain trauma. And we said, let's talk about these. So the first one we sat down on is youth sports. There are parents out there who have children in youth sports who are worried about the concussions, whether they play soccer or they do gymnastics where they could fall, or American football is the one that gets attention all the time. Let's have a conversation and information for parents who are concerned about this issue, and not in a what is the biology or the medical approach to this, but like as someone who's worried, what are the facts that are as they are right now. So what we did is we sat down with a leading researcher out of Ohio State who does youth concussion research. And we asked him questions as a parent of 3 young boys who play American football. How do you balance those 2 worlds? From a scientific perspective, from a medical perspective, what is the information that you would want other parents to know in making informed, conscious decisions? And that approach is kind of what we expanded outwards to our other initiatives. So the other one we talked about is brain trauma and the long-term consequences. We wanted to focus on, there is a definitive correlation between hitting your head at some point in your life and long-term issues such as dementia or possible neurodegenerative disease processes. And I think that's something that scares people, right? Alzheimer's is a scary thing. Dementia is a scary thing. And there's a correlation between these 2 worlds of incredibly prevalent problems, but folks don't have the information they need. And the last one we sat down and came up with was policy, tax dollars, community impact. So whether you know it or not, wherever you are in the country, some percentage of your tax dollars goes towards state-funded initiatives towards some kind of like trauma or like youth-based assessment of trauma. It happens, I think, in 49 of the 50 states right now. So we wanted to talk to people that are working in the science policy world of where are tax dollars from individual going, what is the support that is coming from those, and kind of how does this actually impact your community, the folks that are living next door to you, right? So all of this to say we took a much broader issue, like informing folks on neurotrauma, and said, how do we make it relatable to the individual sitting on their couch on a Saturday morning, scrolling their Instagram feed, or sitting at their son's soccer game who hits their head and they get worried, things that are everyday approachable topics, but give them good scientific information about it. And we're excited about where this is going. And I'm really, really thankful for SAi for kind of stirring the process, because I had thought about this for quite a while, but didn't really have a vector to do it through. And I think SAi really served as that template of, hey, let's get this going. Here's the logic model. What is your problem, right? Who do you need to get the problem to? And then things like outputs, the actual like media graphics that we're generating, the podcast episodes for folks to listen to, stuff like that. And then outcomes, how is it actually impacting people? And when I sat down and I thought about that last piece, and I'll wrap up here, is the outcomes, the stuff we're creating, we want folks within their own community to use, right? So we're not just asking folks to come to National Neurotrauma or something like that. Folks that are part of National Neurotrauma who are within their own communities can go to the organization that they know they represent, they're a part of, but pull this information down and make it applicable to their community. So it's really a top-down type of initiative where we want folks to have pertinent, relevant, reliable, trustworthy, but understandable information. And then we want our own community to kind of go out there and be their own advocates. So this was really a top level, let's design something that folks can then use on their own. And with that, I'll wrap it up. There are a whole bunch of thank yous that I could put on the slide, but really it's just a general thank you to SAi, a very specific thank you to Pete, who week in and week out sat down and kind of helped me hash through this process. We learned very quickly that when you're working with bigger organizations, and I think I had an advantage here compared to some of my other fellows who were doing a lot of things kind of like, how do we get it started from nothing? I was working with a bigger national organization, but I think with that, we learned there's challenges like anything else, where you gotta get through some hurdles that you wouldn't otherwise expect. But I think SAi provided an outstanding opportunity for me here to get something going that I'm excited about, and I think has the potential to have legs to keep going. And with that, I'll take questions, but really this has been an outstanding 10 weeks and I've been impressed by the presentation so far. I'm sure I'll continue to be impressed, and genuinely thank you to everyone.
Great, thank you, DJ. Quick question already from Patricia. How do you plan to extend your viewers past those already interested in brain trauma?
Yeah, I think that's an outstanding point, right? Because the folks within NNS care and they want to know things about brain trauma. I think it's a matter of, and it kind of goes to the last point that we were thinking about, is there are folks within NNS, and they are all part of their own individual communities. And it's our responsibility as the folks building this initiative to engage actively with our community who's going to see everything we put out, but then encourage them to take our materials and go elsewhere with them. Tell folks, hey, if you're worried about youth concussions, like NNS just put out this podcast episode that is pretty informative about that. Just give it a listen. It's 20 minutes. Or actually, I saw this graphic that they sent out last week. Here it is. So kind of giving a community of a couple hundred to a couple thousand researchers tools to be their own advocates.
Okay. So a couple more questions. Jessica's asking, are there any other avenues to plug into? Think of NFL, Harvard Concussion Study, American Academy of Pediatrics, et cetera.
Yeah. There's a ton. And I think there's a lot of people working on this. Everyone's kind of got their own approach to it, but the beauty of it is a lot of these things overlap. And I think anyone who works, I mean, everyone here knows that a lot of science overlaps in some capacity. So it's just a matter of starting those conversations. I mean, this came to me because I'm a part of NNS, and I'd worked with them in the past, and I knew they had an outreach arm, but it hadn't done much. So that's unfair. It hadn't done as much as it could have. And it's a matter now that the wheels are turning, how do we tap into a lot of those untapped markets, like a lot of those institutes that are working with bigger communities, think like the NFL or a huge youth football organization, stuff like that. So there's a lot of untapped potential here for sure.
Yeah, and Matt is wondering, so especially given your current institution, about the military piece here, as I believe shoulder-fired weapons have been shown to cause concussive injuries after very few shots. Are veterans or veteran advocates and policymakers also part of your audience?
For sure. I think I'm very uniquely positioned here in that, being within the Department of Defense, we have the ear of folks who are intimately financially invested in this problem. So if we're talking about our military population, Congress invests a lot of money in these folks every year and invests a lot of money to keep them healthy. So they're inherently attached to the issue. So now it's a matter of science communication, right? How do we present the problem clearly and with the facts as we know them today, and say, here's what we are doing, here's what we can do going forward with some more support. Here's what we could do, right? And I don't think that's an easy thing, but having well thought out, well put together, collaborative, multi-source tools to do that is a great starting spot.
Great. Thank you so much, DJ.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was great having you. So we're gonna keep going. Up next, Priscilla Guzman, you're up next. Thank you for joining. I think you should be co-host and able to share your slides.
Interesting. There we go. Hello, everyone. So as Fanuel mentioned, my name is Priscila Guzman, and my project is STEM Latinx. And so what I'm looking for, the main goal of this project is to empower Latino youth to pursue careers in STEM. And so a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, in the smallest city in Puerto Rico, which, as you can see in the picture on the right, it's very rural. And, you know, living surrounded by nature, I was always out and about running in the mountains. And it was in those mountains where I started feeling very passionate about science. At age 15, I was part of the very first research experience that I've done, where I went to underground caves in Puerto Rico and collected some bats and insects and did a tally of the flora and fauna of the caves. And this specific experience highlighted not only the importance of education, but it also highlighted the importance of a strong support system. Because when I was in school, of course, I was part of this program that was after school program. Also, we met on the weekends. It was, of course, my family who were the ones taking me there at 5 in the morning for the research experiences, driving during the weekend back and forth, making sure that I was where I was supposed to be and just supporting my dreams. And of course, not only were they my support system, they were my role models. And you know, that has been true my entire life, but definitely now as an adult, I can look back and see, definitely I'm here because of them. And specifically, the main reason why I'm so interested in science is my mom. My mom is a chemist, and she was always the person just trying to nurture my creativity. And something that just made me, while working on this project, I look back as to what made me go into science. And it was that first research experience and just having them as my role models and support system. And so right now I'm in my last year of my PhD at Kansas State University, working in biology. And what I try to do now is I try to be someone else's role model. I do a lot of outreach here in Kansas. And through the outreach, my main goal is to give other kids what I was given. And so I partner with the Office for the Advancement of Women in Science and Engineering, with the local zoo as one of their science communication fellows. I am one of the mentors of Girls in STEM, a summer camp that provides hands-on activities to girls. And one of the main things that I do on the right, picture on the right, is I am the science mentor of the VERDE CLOVERS, a Latino club here in the county that I live in. And this group is near and dear to my heart, the VERDE CLOVERS, because they are composed of families, Latino families specifically, that come from South America, and they're here, but they don't have, what they're trying to do is have a sense of community. And when I started being their mentor about 4 years ago, one of the first thing I did was basically ask them, what do you want to do when you grow up? What is the goal in your life? Because I wanted to see, like, what were they thinking? What were things that I could do to engage with them? And I heard a lot of things like, oh, I want to be a truck driver, or I want to be a nanny. I want to cut hair, or I want to work in a farm. And these are all things that they were exposed to because, of course, their parents and just in general, the community that they lived in, these are the type of jobs that they do. As Gabby mentioned, they are service workers. They're essential workers. And so I followed that question with, well, do you want to be a scientist? Do you want to do some science or go into medicine? And all of them said no. And when I asked why, they were like, well, it's just so hard. That is for very small people, or that is for people with money. And, you know, I'm not smart, or I don't have the time, or I don't have the money. And that is what basically gave me the idea of this program, where right now the goal for me, I'm going to start with the VERDE CLOVERS, is to expand the opportunities in their eyes, just to expand their aspirations so that they can see that they can be more than what they see. You know, you can be more, or you can have other jobs than what you're used to. And that's how STEM Latinx started. The problem that I saw, and the problem that actually has been cataloged in the literature, is that due to family influences, low expectations, and the lack of exposure to role models, Latinx youth are less likely to pursue a career in STEM fields. And we see this nowadays, where even though Latinos are about 19% of the population in the United States, we occupy about 6% of STEM, of the careers in STEM fields. So my mission with this program is to empower Latinx youth to pursue STEM careers by exposing them to positive role models, by cultivating high expectations of themselves, and by strengthening their family support system. So how are we going to do this? Our approach is holistic and very simple. So we know that students learn by interacting with more than three, but in this case, we're going to focus on three main communities: their parents, the teacher, and then peers. And so we are going to focus on the parents. We are going to provide informal teaching to the parents so that they can feel encouraged and they can help their kids. They can be the support system for their kids. We are going to focus on the kids by exposing them to just science, technology, engineering, and math, by giving them hands-on activities, and also by exposing them to positive role models. And we are going to, with both of these groups, what we're going to do is we're going to cultivate high expectations. So with the youth, we're going to cultivate high expectations of themselves. And when it comes to the parents, we're going to talk to them to cultivate high expectations of their kids. For the pilot program, our audience are going to be the VERDE CLOVERS, specifically the VERDE CLOVERS youth and their parents. The mentors are going to be grad students here at Kansas State University. And the structure that we're planning to do is we're planning to follow a bi-weekly meeting from February to April, giving us 6 meetings total. And for that, we're going to have, this is just our draft curriculum, where you have the youth on the top, the parents at the bottom. The first and last week is going to look exactly the same for both groups, where we have on the first week introduction, we're going to explain the reasoning of this program. We're going to have pre-program surveys. We're going to introduce the mentors, the curriculum, and the goals. And then on week 6, we're going to have, of course, the end of the program, the reflection, the post-program surveys, and just the closing. But between the beginning and the end of the program, of course, things are going to be a little bit different between the two groups. For the youth, we're going to have mini lectures and hands-on activities that focus on, STEM, different STEM fields. But also, we're going to have one day where we're going to focus on future paths and different careers that they can follow, specifically in schools close to the county that we're living in right now. And then for the parents, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on different main things that will allow the parents to help with their kids' education. We're going to give them informal education to educational resources in town or online. We're going to explain to them the different career options that their kids can follow. We're going to explain to them how can their kids apply to colleges and universities. And very importantly, because most of them do not know this, we're going to expose them to the funding opportunities that their kids can pursue and of course obtain to go and do some higher education. The way in which we will be measuring success by looking at an increase in the number of parents that support their kids going into STEM careers, an increase in the number of positive interactions between youth and STEM role models, and also a change in aspirations. Are we going to see maybe some of the youth at the end of the program thinking that they are going to go into STEM? That is definitely something that we want to see. But so that is what we expect. And are we going to see parents supporting and expecting or hopefully aspiring for the kids to be doctors or scientists? And then when it comes to the program itself, a couple of things that we've done so far, we surveyed the parents and the youth, and that is why the curriculum draft is that way, because those are the things that they are mostly interested in. We have some, of course, draft curriculums, and we started recruiting some mentors and talking about the logo with a designer from Puerto Rico. Things that we will do in the near future, recruiting a team, because most of the things I've done by myself and it's being a little bit challenging. So recruiting people that have, that share the passion for outreach and can help me make this a reality. Creating a website, starting to work on the surveys, and of course having a mentor training, finish the curriculum and find some funding sources for our program. And then I just want to briefly thank Girl of Lean, because she's been amazing, helping me out throughout these last few weeks. And of course, Fanuel for your help, everyone in SAi, and just everyone that's here attending our meeting. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much, Priscilla. I think everybody's in love with your logo. I am too. Neva just dropped that comment in the session there. Wonderful, wonderful logo. And also Jessica's mentioning I really like this model of simultaneous parent curriculum, very super key for buy-in. And Priscilla, we've chatted a lot about this, the key about engaging parents, right? And definitely creates challenges, of course, right? But I think they cannot be left behind, shall we say. Matt is also mentioning fantastic logo. I think the logo is a hit. If anything, you got some great feedback on that.
I thought people were going to be a little bit confused by the logo. I mean, no one knows. I created the logo, but basically it has the spirals because of STEM, and it has 4 symbols from the 4 indigenous tribes that, Latino indigenous tribes, Incas, Aztecas, Mayas, and Taínos. So, and
Nice.
it represents knowledge, power, freedom, and wisdom.
Wow, wonderful. What is your target age group, Matt is asking?
For this program, I was thinking about going with middle schoolers specifically. Just all the youth that are part of middle school right now basically will be their targeted group.
Okay. And do you see this becoming a nonprofit or like?
Yeah.
Okay, because right now you have no formal structure, right?
No, right now, no.
Okay.
But yeah, the plan for the future is to definitely making this a nonprofit.
Okay. Pete is asking, do you think there'll be difficulty in recruiting groups with parents and kids? Many parents love to drop their kids off and getting other things done. You know, here are the kids, see ya. How are you going to combat that?
So hopefully, one of the ways in which I was thinking, and one of the reasons why I need funding for, I don't know if Gabby will agree with me, but I guess for Latino families, if you have food, they will be there. If you have food, if you provide food for them, they will be there and they will listen to the lecture. So that's one of the reasons why funding is important, because of course, all of them are actually from very low-income families. So not only providing them food so that they can stay there, the hour or two while we're in lecture, but also I think they are already invested in the education and just in general in the growth of their kids. I know all of these kids because they're part of this 4-H club, and the parents are always part of the meetings because they actually want to participate. They want to learn, they want to grow as well. So I don't think that with this specific group, I will have a problem with that. But I want to say probably in the future, as I move on to another place or something like that, that might be something that I need to consider.
A very good point. And one of the things we tell our fellows, if it is the first lecture, talk to your users, right? Talk to your audience and get that data. And I think the question that Pete is asking is really, you're going to iterate, you're going to find out what works, what doesn't. You're going to give them food, maybe half will come, right? What are other things that will work until you get in there? Because you haven't started to do this yet, right? You haven't gone in there. Yeah. So this is an exciting point where you're going to get that data. And it's very, very important to be data-driven on your decision making. Lots of chances here to collaborate. I'm seeing some comments here about collaboration. So expect some links, people emailing you. Matt Wilkins is saying here, we should chat. Okay, he's saying that to you specifically. So definitely drop him a message on that. With that said, talking to users, I would like to welcome Amrita next and showcase her project. Amrita, thank you.
I hope everybody can hear me and can see my slides as well. Okay, hello everybody. Okay, I am really nervous now after all those really amazing presentations so far, but I'm here presenting, I'm going to present to you what I've been working on for the last 10 weeks at SAi. So my project is Project Science Samvad. So basically my project aims to help students, especially in India, communicate science through effective talks. So a little bit about myself. I am a bench scientist who found solace in SciComm. So I felt that basically my interest in SciComm started when every time I had a bad day in lab, I used to, go talk to somebody completely not related to my project, and then get a sense of confidence back that, hey, okay, the work I'm doing is important. And I'm so happy that somebody understood what I told them. And presently, I'm a 5th-year PhD candidate at the genetics department at the Baylor College of Medicine. My research focus is hearing loss genetics. So the complexity starts from there. And it's a challenging topic to make people understand. My other interests include singing, gardening, and cooking. Here are a few pictures from what we've been up to during the pandemic, me and my husband. So that said, getting into why Science Samvad. So my project's name first. So Science, everybody knows what that means. Samvad means conversations in Hindi. So because my target audience here is a STEM undergraduate audience in India, the name Samvad. So Samvad essentially means conversations. So what I mean by science conversations is it's not always presentations where we need to be good at talking about science. It can be something like a dinner table conversation. It can be an elevator pitch, a 3-minute thesis, all these things that I came to know only after I came to the US for graduate school. Now, my enthusiasm in science was nothing less when I was in India. I had the same enthusiasm, I wanted to learn, but I just realized, or at that point, I didn't have people who told me what science communication was, or that there was something called science communication even when I was a student back in India. So this made me think over the last few years, while I trained in different aspects of science communication, the aspect that I enjoyed the most was talking, giving scientific presentations, making people understand my research, sharing my energy and enthusiasm with them. And I realized that this kind of a training doesn't exist in India, and I wanted to do something to take some of these things that I learned over the last few years to people out there who are definitely interested. So my problem statement here, just like what I mentioned, there is no scientific communication talk training that's available. My target audience is a STEM undergraduate audience because I believe that starting with this kind of training, which takes several years to get good at, it's always better to do that early than when people are right into like a research career, because they need to spend time on this aspect. And the benefits of this training is simply having effective scientific awareness. I mean, having effective conversations that improve scientific awareness, and then also growth in different stages of STEM careers as people even move from one stage to another right after undergraduate into master's, PhD, and so on. So my mission statement basically includes introducing students to the concept of science communication and why do you need to do science communication and why is it important to make people understand and the nuances of that. And I envision doing this through lectures and handouts and have like a simple 5-part series. And this series will basically cover some theoretical concepts as well as provide training and practice opportunities. I plan to have a competition for students at the end of this lecture series and see all their learning come into play based on what they got from those 5 sessions. And then based on interests and how people want to engage, there will also be networking sessions with experts and even amongst fellow students. So this is what I have envisioned as the mission statement for my project. So here is my concept map for project development. And these are what I have, like I've sketched this out as the different components of the 5-part series that I've planned, what each module will talk about, and this is dynamically evolving. So I just keep going over this once every few days, changing it according to what I feel will be more relevant and useful. So what I did over the last 10 weeks is, once I thought about this project, fine-tuned the whole idea of narrowing it down to focusing on the talk skill set. I developed the first module to begin with, based on the components in the concept map that I just showed you. So the GIF that's running there is my presentation. And the screenshot below is the workbook that I developed for the first module. So the first module basically talks about a lot of concepts in science communication, why. So the module focused on the need for science communication and the different aspects of misinformation that are important for people to understand so that they can effectively handle or thwart that using effective talks. Yeah, so once I developed the first module's materials, it was just a basic presentation and a workbook. So I made sure that the workbook had like a question and answers based on the concepts that I covered in the presentation there. And I also had a crossword and a few other interesting fill in the blanks and that kind of stuff, which people like to usually work on. At least I enjoyed it. So based on that, I just put it together. The second thing I did was I basically reached out to a small target audience group through my contacts in LinkedIn, who I know are folks who are also interested in science communication, who I have had regular discussions with, not about this project, but well before. And I had about 57 people register for the first beta version. And I had given some time slots, and most of the people who registered were able to attend on these 2 time slots mentioned here. So I went ahead on Zoom, gave this presentation, circulated a feedback form and the workbook, and here's what my attendees had to say. So there were 57 students who registered, but only 40 were able to attend it owing to the time slot issues. And most of them were undergraduates. There were a few medical students and MS PhD students too. And here are some metrics that I got based on the numbers that the attendees gave me on the feedback form. It was completely anonymous. So this was very heartwarming for me, especially as an individual who was just putting this together, had no idea how this is going to turn out. I was super happy, and I'm totally encouraged at this point to take this forward. So I felt the attendees felt that the content was interesting and relevant. They felt the slides were visually appealing, and the presentation was lively. They were able to understand everything, and they seemed to enjoy the session overall. One assessment by me is that I felt that even though I encouraged the attendees to sort of turn on their video and interact, again, Indian undergraduate students are a very shy lot. So this is another thing that I want to really break through this 5-part series, where I hope that people start getting comfortable in turning on their video, interacting, talking to fellow students with me, and so on. But since this was the first session, people were very shy, but they interacted on the chat box, and it got better through the proceedings of the hour, which was encouraging. So the most liked aspect was the content and slides. So that was a good thing for me. And the least liked was people felt that one hour was kind of short, and they felt like had it been longer, they would have interacted some more, and it would have been more exhaustive. And suggestions that I got from the attendees for future modules was they felt that if I had included more day-to-day examples, it would have been easier. And many people also reached out to me individually saying that I'm an introvert. I hope you can cover aspects which are specific for introverts being good at giving these scientific talks too. So I have all these in mind, and I'm developing the second module right now, and I will be reaching out, doing the exact same thing, running a beta version for the next 4 modules as well. So the next steps include, based on the concept map I showed before, which is evolving. I am going to continue making these modules. I'm going to have similar beta testing and feedback sessions. And then I also hope to provide swags for attendees. This is just to sort of continue increasing their enthusiasm, and also keep in touch with me, share the word, and so on, because I don't yet have a website for this project. I'm also parallelly gathering contact information and getting feedback for these modules from other experts. So with respect to this contest that I mentioned very briefly, what I have in mind is, once these 5 modules, the beta versions are all done, the announcement for the contest will be made in a few months. And I'm also going to try and secure funding for providing all participants with swags and prizes. So this is, again, something that I will be working on in depth once I finish developing the modules. And I hope to, so my measures of the outcomes and measures are basically to see how many people take part, how many people are confidently able to imbibe all the concepts and techniques that they learned from these modules into their own talk, and how they're able to present and participate in this contest. And this is going to be an iterative process. I'm going to once again gain feedback, even regarding the contest, regarding the way all of this went, what they learned, and so on a continuous basis, and then keep improving what I have started out now. So I hope to take this one step at a time. So this is where I am at this point. So this is, it's a lot of text here because this is my logic model, but I'm just going to quickly run through it. So the inputs, contacts of universities, funding to purchase some swags and equipments. So the activities, as I mentioned, they're just the lectures and the notes, and talking to experts and hands-on workshop. Those are all just still as thoughts. I haven't really taken any steps towards that, because I still believe that if my attendees are not interested in these aspects, I will not be going forward with it. So I just have a tentative idea or a list of activities, but as and when I keep getting feedback from my attendees and whatever they would like to have, I will keep refining this list. And then outputs, again, this is going to be determined by participation and feedback from attendees to a large extent. And something concrete or some actionable item for me, based on which I can understand or see how much the attendees have taken or gained from these lectures and what I'm trying to get across to them, is again, the success of that contest that I just spoke about, which I will be able to see in a few months' time. And the assumptions here is, since all of this is virtual and that students have to do this voluntarily, the assumption is that students and universities are interested in aspects of science communication itself, because this is a major challenge where a lot of people are like, am I getting a paper out of this? Is this a journal? It's very difficult to make them understand that science communication, a lot of it is voluntary. You start off with it without any tangible benefits, but you start to see the benefits, and after some time, it's not immediate. So the assumption is that they're going to stay interested, they want to learn, and they want to really try their hands at this. So with that, I'm indebted to all the support and enthusiasm that I've received over the last 10 weeks. And big thank you to SAi, my mentor, Brittany Trin, for all those weekly sessions with me, she herself being an inspiration, and Program Director, Dr. Fanuel Muindi. Thank you, Fanuel, for all your useful feedback and your enthusiasm in each of those weekly sessions. And then I would also like to specifically thank Dr. Piyush Gupta, Dr. Deepa Menon, and Ms. Aishwarya Murali. These three people have been instrumental in spreading the word about the beta version and getting people to register for the first module. And these people are also affiliated with different universities, both private and government in India. So it was it was a very good mix of students that attended the session, and I got diverse feedback, and that was really useful for me. So with that, please connect with Science Samvad on this Gmail ID. Also have a YouTube channel and a Twitter that's not yet active, but will be active in a few months' time. So with that, I would like to thank all the panelists and the attendees, everybody who's here today listening to me. And finally, it feels great to talk about something that I really love doing on one of my favorite days of the year. And to all people out here, happy Diwali. Thank you.
That is a wonderful indeed. Happy Diwali. And thank you for that. So we have time for only one question, and Rosario has got it in there. And I like this question. Is each module targeted to a specific audience? That is,
No.
Are you training people to communicate to scientists? Actually, that's a good question. Who are you training for people to communicate to? Okay, so no, each module is not targeted to a specific audience. So I do cover how you craft each talk. I mean, I also cover how you craft a specific talk depending on your audience. In fact, that is something that I addressed right at the beginning. But the 5-part series is just going to be for how to give an effective talk. So that will basically cover everything from stage presence to identifying your audience to, it's very broad at this point. Okay, so broad, and then maybe in future iterations or
Yes.
sub-courses you could target and say, okay, this is for communicating to scientists or the broader audience.
Right.
I think there's definitely a lot of room in there.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Amrita. We're going to keep moving forward. Danielle, you are up next. And thank you all for sticking put with us. We're making good progress and we're getting close to the end here. So I'm very excited and I'm just inspired. I don't know about you, I'm inspired and full of energy. And great. Welcome, Danielle.
Okay, here, so let me get my presentation mode going. Okay, one moment here, I'd like to hide the, am I able to hide the video? Oh, there we go, okay, I got it. Okay, hi everyone, thank you so much for being here. My name is Danielle Jones. I mainly go by Danny though. I am a PhD candidate of neuroscience at Kent State University. And the project that I've been developing as a fellow over the past 10 weeks is a neuroscience-based mental health program for high school students called Neuro Wellness for Young Adults. So a bit about me, I kind of got into neuroscience in a roundabout way. I was born and raised in Iowa and attended the University of Iowa where I studied anthropology. And I was mainly interested in human evolution. I thought the topic was super, super cool. And we began studying topics like primate cognition. And we learned about all these cool things that the chimpanzees could do and how they had their own cultures. And I was just super fascinated. And I wanted to really learn more about how the chimpanzee brain compares to the human brain. And this led me to graduate school at Kent State to work with Dr. Marianne Riganti, who is a comparative evolutionary neuroscientist. So that is where I currently am. And my research is on comparative primate neurochemistry and primate genetics. So why mental health? I've been spending the past 4 years studying monkey brains. So how did I end up focusing on mental health for my outreach project? Well, the story actually begins with me. So this is me 10 years ago. So this is from April 2010. And I was a senior in high school. Things were going really well. And by all measures, I was a really great student. I was a high achiever, played sports, had friends. I'd been accepted into colleges, so everyone was very proud of me, and I would be the first person in my family to go to college. So things were great, things were going great. And this photo, actually, I remember this day very clearly. I was rushing home from tennis because I had a school dance to go to. So I got ready, I was so excited, but I was also very worried. And from the morning until I walked out the door that day, I kept on thinking to myself, please, please, please do not have a meltdown. Just be okay, let this night be okay. And these were new thoughts for me. Normally, I would really be excited to go to school events, to be around my friends, to have a night with the boy that I liked and all that good stuff. But something had changed. So recently, right around this time, maybe a couple weeks prior to this dance, I had started having what I would later find out were really bad panic attacks in school. And they would come on just really out of nowhere. I found myself just sitting in class, working on, worksheets or talking to my friends. And I would just have this intense feeling of being super uneasy and feeling really hot and then having these cold sweats and this urge to just flee the scene as if something was really wrong. I didn't understand what was happening, and they became more and more frequent. So at the time, my teachers, they recognized what was going on, and a couple of them were a little concerned. For example, one of them, she gave me a nice hug and she let me have time to redo an exam that I literally just ditched and didn't come to because of a panic attack. So that was nice, and I thanked her. Another one, in the letter she gave to the graduating seniors, she wrote a letter to all of her students in the advanced English class. And in the letter she wrote, you know, sometimes I worry about you. And I'm thinking to myself, yes, I'm worried about me too. And another one, she kind of pulled me aside and in reference to my sudden change in like attendance. I wasn't showing up to class as much anymore towards the end of the year. And she looked at me and she said, you know, you are better than this. And in my head, I'm thinking, I wish I was better than this, because whatever this is, I don't like it. And it's really getting to me. My parents kind of just told me, no, you're probably stressed. You should just rest more. And we kind of just tried to like laugh it off as a phase that would pass. But it really wasn't funny at all to me, and it didn't pass. It followed me all the way through university, and I never got help until graduate school. So over the past 2 to 3 years, really, I would say is where I really learned more about anxiety and about myself, where I've actually like sought help and developed personal wellness practices to manage my anxiety so that I can actually do the things I want to do and be present in my life. So when all of this was happening, you know, back in high school, it felt like it was only happening to me. Like it felt like my world was crashing down and I was a weirdo who was having these weird attacks, and my friends probably thought I was going through some weird stuff. I was just feeling super alone. But in reality, it was a lot of my peers were likely having many of the same problems. In research from the CDC, their data spanning from the past decade shows that adolescents and high schoolers are many of them are really in a negative headspace, and things are only getting worse. So for example, over the past decade, it's found that there's been around a 40% increase in like persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness, increases in making suicide plans. And it's estimated that a majority of them never actually receive help. Research has also shown that public and self-stigma is still highly prevalent. So it feels to me as if even just over my like lifetime, that the topic of mental health itself seems to be more out in the open. Like if you're scrolling on social media or if you're on Instagram, sometimes you'll come across like people who, you know, dedicate their time to sending out positive messaging related to mental health and mental illness and putting it out there more so. But the research shows that there's still lots of stigma surrounding it, and it can lead to adolescents kind of suffering in silence and avoiding interventions that may even be available to them. And though many schools have reported that they do have mental health screening and also resources about treatment, they also report that there are still significant barriers to providing these services at school, including lack of funding, sometimes even lack of parental support in fully addressing the students' mental health struggles, as well as inadequate access to healthcare professionals. So the problems then are very clear. There's poor mental health among adolescents, and there is stigma surrounding mental illness. And research has identified contributing factors to these problems, such as lack of awareness and education about mental illness. This often contributes to this stigma and builds it. Research has also identified a multitude of factors that influence the development of mental illness among adolescents. So knowing all of this, I really wanted to be part of the solution. I wanted to help. And as a neuroscientist, you know, I'm not a clinician. I'm not someone who can directly counsel these students. I can't save the world. But I do love teaching and mentoring. And I figured the best way for me to help would be through education. And this could include teaching and promoting healthy habits, providing practical tools that support mental wellness, which can be incorporated into the daily life of teens. Also education about these normal developmental and biological processes and the etiology as well as treatment of mental illness. Providing resources to these students on where they can seek clinical help, and really emphasizing in this education that you are a biological being that is embedded in this complex environment, and mental illness is not a character flaw. And I have come across some research that has used education to test whether or not teaching people, often maybe undergraduate students, I've found many studies, not many, but a handful, not enough studies on this topic, whether teaching about the biology of mental illness does help to reduce stigma. And they have found that it does. Many of the studies are very short, where they maybe will just do like 1 or 2 lessons. And I've seen this and I wanted to do something a bit more large scale, and I wanted to focus it on high school students. So this really led to the idea of neuro wellness for young adults. So the goal then for this program or this course is to educate young adults about the neurobiology that underlies our complex mental lives in order to decrease stigma surrounding mental illness and to encourage behaviors that support brain health and mental wellness. So this fellowship has really allowed me a time and a space to make good progress on this. And I have to give a huge thanks to my mentor, Pete. He has been so great tossing around ideas. And just like the other fellows, we've gone through the logic model, thinking about the required resources and content and the assessment of the course, the program. So far, I've been able to narrow down the topics that I really hope to focus on for the course. These include like the social brain, individuality, anxiety and stress, cognition, the reward system, and sex and gender in the brain. And then with each of these topics, then we'll talk about like the normal developmental processes as well as mental disorders associated with each of these key topics. And here I just show some of the texts that I have been going through to figure out maybe I want to pull and use these texts for the course. And these two here, The Disordered Mind by Eric Kandel, this seems like to be a really good fit for my course. It really focuses specifically on mental illness. So we don't have students, especially high school students, who maybe aren't so used to even talking about the brain or learning about the brain, like leafing through some dense textbook. Instead, we have this really great book that I've been reading so far, focusing on mental illness and also normal processes as well. And then another book that is new that came out that I'm working through to see if it may be useful is called Brain Tools for Teens. And it talks a lot about brain development and really basic neuroscience. And it gives just really good tips to try out to see how it can help, for example, developing good habits around sleep or your activity or your diet or how to manage stress. So I've also been able to work through format and delivery. So I envision this course being a 5 to 7 week program offered over the course of these 7 weeks, being 1.5 to 2 hours per week, with just a small to medium group of students. Considering the situation we're in with the pandemic, I am of course formatting it to be virtual, but I would really hope to be in person eventually. And it would be a mix of like classroom, a bit of lab instruction, just so they can get some hands-on experiences, kind of seeing a brain and seeing the structures that we're talking about. I will be bringing in guest speakers. So these could be scientists, whether they're faculty or grad students working on these topics, mental health professionals and wellness professionals. And we'll be having group discussions, activities, and students will have a chance to do their own projects. So I am really excited about the progress I've made here. And I've been able to confirm one of the guest speakers or guest teachers. So this is my advisor, Dr. Raganti. And about 2 years ago, she became really concerned about the mental health of graduate students. And she had also been experimenting herself with mindfulness meditation. And she found it really helpful for herself. So she ended up training to be a mindfulness instructor through a program called CoRU Mindfulness. And this is a program that was developed by researchers at Duke University. I believe it is a doctor and a therapist developed this. And now it is offered at many universities across the nation. And it's for young adults. So it could be people just entering college or even the age group between like late teens all the way up until like 30 or so. It's really focused on that early part of emerging into adulthood. So she has agreed to come in and do some sessions, a session, maybe even a couple sessions with the students so they can experience and learn more about mindfulness, meditation for stress reduction. I've also had the opportunity to share about the program with the larger Kent State community. And there have been several departments and people who have been interested. So these include like the Brain Health Research Institute here. So many different faculty and labs. We all come together and kind of share our research, as well as other institutions here in Northeast Ohio. The psychology department, grad students, the wellness services. And I've also had a chance to meet with Upward Bound here at Kent State. So if you're not familiar, Upward Bound, it is like a federally funded college prep program for high school students. And I took part in it as a high school student in Iowa. So it's for low income, first gen or minority students. And I met with them and shared this with them. And they asked me to teach this course to their juniors and seniors this summer. So I have a lot of work to do, course development that continues, and I'm really excited to do that for them this summer. So in addition to continuing on with just general course development and reaching out to other grad students who have expressed interest in, working on lesson plans and doing talks and such, I'm really thinking forward and thinking about establishing ways to collect quantitative and qualitative data to assess the effectiveness of the program. So just really ask, is this program helping to reduce stigma? Are students adopting more healthy behaviors, and are they leaving with an increased knowledge about their brains? Then later down the road, I hope to expand outreach to parents. So this could be, so I envision this being like a website where there are materials that talk about adolescent brain development and mental illness, and also maybe some physical materials that can be handed out from the school and such. So with that, I'd like to say thank you. A huge thanks to SAi. This has been a wonderful opportunity, and I appreciate all of you and all of the speakers. To my mentor, Pete, he has been super great in passing back and forth these ideas, asking me great questions, and a really great support through all of this. And yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any questions or anything you'd like to contribute. Here's just some sources if you ever get a chance to see the, if you'd like to have a copy of the presentation.
That's great.
Okay.
I think, yeah, your email there, definitely do email Danielle if you have a question. Let's see if there are any questions here. Let's see, any questions from anybody? We have, time for one. Do you and how do you plan to integrate or address cultural differences in the perception of mental illness and wellness within your program?
That's a really good one. Yeah, so I hope to meet with some like therapists or people in the psychology department here who work on those topics. I have a couple of people in mind specifically. For example, there's a really great researcher here who studies like anxiety and mental disorders in young Black females. And I hope to search more and consult with these people or bring them in to present their research and contribute to the program.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'd like to welcome our next presenter, Rosario. And Danny, there's a comment from Niba in the Q&A if you can, hopefully you can see that. Okay, Rosario, you're up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rosario. I am a fourth-year PhD candidate at Illinois State University, and I'm excited to talk about my project, Pub Navigator. So being a student for a while now, I've gotten really used to reading papers. And what we find is that these scientific papers are not really accessible to general audiences. And often they're not accessible to us, depending on how field specific they are. So scientists are talking to scientists. Scientists are talking, but they're mostly just talking to each other. We will present our research in publications and conferences, and that's how we distribute information. We just talk to each other. And what you find is that we have steadily been increasing our output over time. More papers, more papers, more papers. But the issue is that these papers are becoming less and less accessible. So there's they're a lot more wordy, they have a lot more scientific jargon, field-specific jargon, and they're harder to understand. And what we know is that most people in the United States will learn about science by following mass media outlets. So they will watch the news, they will scroll on the internet. This is how they learn information about science. But less than 1% of the published papers that we produce are showing up in these outlets. So you can see that there's really a disconnect between the scientific output and what people are actually seeing. And as a result, people aren't really learning about the science itself. And what ends up happening then is that scientific literacy is not keeping pace with scientific output. And this is the problem that I wanted to address with my project. So before I get into the new title for my project, I guess I just wanted to introduce this. This is the SACNIS Research Spotlight. So I have a registered student organization on campus, the Society Advancing Chicanos, Hispanics, and Native Americans in Science, or SACNIS. It's really common and really well known out in the Southwest where I grew up, but in the Midwest, it's not as well known. So on campus, we have a local unofficial chapter of the SACNIS program. And we do professional development, we get students out to the conference, and we've also been engaging and putting a lot of effort into this science communication project that we're calling the Research Spotlight. So this is an example of what we have here. Essentially, we've created our own journal. We take graduate and undergraduate publications, and then we translate it using language that is accessible to general audiences, and then we kind of put it in this journal and try to share it more broadly. And if you guys want to see it, I have a copy right here. So when I met with the Science Advocacy Institute, I kind of shared with them this project, and they gave me a lot of really good ideas about ways to expand it. Because right now we kind of have it student to student. We're only taking things from graduate and undergraduate students, and we really can only reach the number of people who actually have access to this document. So what we're trying to do then is expand the reach by working, transferring everything to a web-based platform called Pub Navigator. And my mission is to improve science literacy by making scientific research more accessible. And how we're doing this is we're taking these published papers and we write an article that summarizes the research contained in these papers. And we use language that's accessible to a high school graduate. And so these articles all include specific portions. We have a biographical portion that highlights the researcher. So who are you? What are your hobbies? What do you like to do? What do you want to do with your life? So that people can get a better understanding of kind of the person behind the science. We have a brief description of the research field. So if I were to contribute, I would say I am an ecophysiologist. Well, what is ecophysiology? And that would be something that we address here. And it includes a summary that describes the main goals of the project. This is kind of akin to an abstract where you just kind of hit the main points of the paper, but again, using this accessible language. There's an in-depth explanation of one or two experiments or of a particular research method. So you'll pick kind of the most impactful figures and you'll break it down. What do these dots mean? What do these lines mean? Why is this important? Or a method. So if you were going to talk about maybe immunofluorescence, you would talk about how that method is completed and then maybe what do the colors mean. We have a big picture statement that addresses the importance of the research. So why should people care about this? Why is this research important? We have a decoding the language section that provides definitions. So inherently, we're going to have to use some jargon, some complex language to just talk about some of these scientific topics. So then what we do is we include definitions that explain and contextualize those words. Finally, each article has a learn more section. So people who are reading it can learn more about the topic. And so often these will link to government websites. So we have a couple publications on turtles because I work in a turtle lab. And so there'll be links on information about turtles. So this is how it works. So the step one is you have someone who has the first author produces research, publishes that paper, and that author will then fill out a template that we have for the article. They will send that template to Pub Navigator, and then Pub Navigator then assigns that article, that draft, to an editing team. So we have a primary editor and a secondary editor. Your primary editor will read the publication and then kind of edit it. And then the secondary editor will not read the publication, will only read the article to make sure that it can kind of stand alone. And once this editing is complete and everything is at the appropriate reading level, we put it on the website. So how do we determine what is a 12th grade reading level? So we use a program called Story Tools, and Story Tools will take a body of text and evaluate it with 7 different readability indices. So it will take your paragraph or your text and give you a score for each of these metrics. And then it will generate kind of an average reading level based on those metrics. And so then what we do is we make sure that every paragraph of the article is written at a 12th grade reading level. So the next question is, well, have we been successful? And we have. So these Pub Navigator articles are easier to read than published papers. So here on the right, we have all of the articles that we have so far. So right now we're pretty biology heavy, but we do have articles from other fields. And as you and here on the left, I have the FLESH readability score. So this is one of those readability indices. And for this particular score, the higher it is, the easier it is to read. And as you can see, our original publications are starting down here among the 20s, 40s, and then are ending up along around the 60 mark. And so as you can see, the Pub Navigator articles are easier to read than the published papers. And because they were written by the first author, they contain really the same information. And so our ability to do this really depends on community buy-in, right? You need your first author to submit to the journal. You need people to volunteer as editors. And so we need to make sure that we have enough buy-in for us to actually be successful doing this. And I'm happy to say that so far we actually have a decent amount of buy-in. So far we've had 18 different volunteers. So these are volunteer editors, and these are also volunteer copy editors. So people who will then just check everything for typos. We've had 10 different contributors, and we've created 11 articles from those contributors. So some contributors bring in multiple different publications. We've had a lot of university buy-in. Our project has been featured in the Redbird Scholar. So that is the kind of journal pamphlet that the university gives out to graduate students, to faculty, to administrators, to donors. And so a lot of people are at least learning about our project, and we've gotten enough university buy-in to be kind of featured. In addition, we've been able to we've applied for and received funding to print and distribute this document. So we so far have printed 90 copies of the Research Spotlight. We've given these copies to people who have really participated, who have submitted, and who have volunteered. We've also handed them out to all of the different science departments on our campus so that we can try to get more excitement and get people to kind of come in from these other fields, because right now we're pretty biology heavy and want to bring other people in. We're also putting them in the library, the provost office, the research office. All of these are ways to try to expand our reach. Obviously, like I said before, we're limited to, our reach is limited when we have these printed documents, and that is why we're expanding to the Pub Navigator site. So all of the articles that end up in the spotlight will be transitioned over to Pub Navigator. And so I launched the website yesterday. So the website is now live. So if you guys want to check it out, it's pubnavigator.com. And my vision with this project is really to make scientists more approachable, to increase science appreciation, and to promote science identity. And I think that, and I'll talk a little bit more about the research aspect of this and kind of get at these particular points. So moving forward, we obviously need to establish a funding structure. So the bigger it gets, the more contributors that we have, the more we're going to need volunteers and perhaps very likely paid people to work as editors. And so moving forward, we're gonna have to try to figure out the funding structure for this, and that's gonna be kind of the next step. In the meantime, we still need to evaluate it and make sure everything works, right? So we have metrics to suggest that it is at a 12th grade reading level, but there are all these other things that we need to evaluate as well. The mission is about science literacy. So is this something that students can understand? And then the next piece then is about the vision, about science identity and science appreciation. And that is something we also need to evaluate. So I am currently have an IRB funded project where we've integrated articles from the Pub Navigator. We've integrated these articles into undergraduate curriculum. So basically freshman level biology majors who are reading these articles, and we have a survey to evaluate how engagement with the Pub Navigator articles will affect science appreciation, science identity, this concept of who is kind of allowed to be a scientist, and also perceptions about common science-related issues like climate change and evolution. And that kind of gets at this question of science literacy in our community. So I'm trying to find ways to evaluate that now, but this is kind of the direction that things are going. And I'm hoping that if you guys are interested in contributing, we always need more volunteers and more contributors. Right now on the website, I've only released the first 3 articles, but I'm going to start releasing them on a weekly basis moving forward. So with that, I'd like to thank the Science Advocacy Institute for all of your help. I'm really excited about the website now. It took me a little bit to get convinced because I was nervous about launching the website, so I really appreciate your help. Brittany Trin was super helpful. She really helped me get the website off the ground. A thanks to SACNIS and all the contributors who helped to develop this project. And with that, I will take any questions.
Woohoo! This is the first live launch we've heard about. That's happened just within the last day. Congratulations. I know how hard it is to get to that point. Lots of questions in there. We can't get through all of them. So I want to just point at one, and then I'll have her just sort of answer Rosario, if you can just answer the questions, type the answer in for the other ones, okay? The one in particular is from Gurlivleen. She's wondering, what is motivation for an author to submit an article to this?
Yeah, so some of it really is buy-in, as they do have to think that it's actually important to communicate their research. And that's kind of it, right? Unfortunately, more and more people are recognizing that this is important, so I haven't really had a hard time getting contributors. But yeah, that's a great question, because there's not a lot of personal benefit, right? Because the way that our science works for us is that the way that you promote yourself is to submit to conferences and do publications. That's how you get tenure. So, I mean, yeah, it does take personal motivation.
Yeah, and I think on that same note, a question from Arvin, what is sort of how you can measure success here? You showed the articles are easy to read, but then is that it, or what else? What change do you see to create out there?
Yeah, that's great. So, I mean, there's a lot of different avenues for measurement, right? One of them, so the first thing is just going to be, are we reaching a broader audience? So I'm going to have measure basically how many people are reading these, how many people are seeing these things. And that's something that I can get from the website. But the next portion is the research aspect. So I then need to actually start doing studies. So introducing these articles into the classroom, that's a really easy group to target, and then measuring how it changes their attitudes. And that's something that I'm doing now.
Yeah, very excited to see how that turns out. Rosaria, thank you so much. The other questions, if you can just type in the answers for them so the others can do it. Wonderful. Getting close, yay. Welcoming next to Lena. You are up, running us towards the back end here. You should be able to share your slides. Great. And for those of you who are still here with us, I do have a special announcement at the end. So if you stick after Sarah's presentation, I will make that announcement. So stay put. Selena, welcome.
Thank you, Fanuel. I'm just getting my screen set up. So thank you everyone for sticking through. Everyone's project has just been really inspiring and amazing. And so I am very excited to share with you what I've been doing for the past 10 weeks. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the project that I've had the privilege to work on with SAi, and it is called Seeable Research, and it's nicknamed SEER, and it aims to amplify the voices of Southeast Asians. And so before I dive deeper into telling you about SEER, I just want to introduce myself. So my name is Selena Tran, and I use she, her pronouns. Alternatively, my Vietnamese pronouns are G, am. I'm currently a PhD student at the University of Michigan, go blue, and I'm actually just starting out, and I am in my first year, and I am in the psychology department concentrating in cognition and cognitive neuroscience. And a little bit more about me, I identify as a Southeast Asian, more specifically Vietnamese American. And for those of us who are less familiar with Southeast Asia, this region of the world is made up of 11 countries as highlighted on the map here. And I just want to point out that often the beginnings of Southeast Asians in the US are as refugees from a time of war, such as the Vietnam War, which ended in 1975, which is only 45 years ago. And so with such diversity in culture and history, I just want to share kind of like my why for pretty much why I am pursuing a PhD, and also like why I started this initiative for SEER. And it can be best highlighted through this tweet by Bo Ren. And it reads, "My parents were tasked with the job of survival and I with self-actualization. The immigration generation gap is real. What a luxury it is to search for purpose, meaning, and fulfillment." And this sentiment is essentially how I am approaching my PhD, as well as my motivation behind SEER. And so you may be wondering, like, why focus specifically on Southeast Asians? You know, aren't Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders overrepresented in education? You know, aren't Asians the model minority? And so to better understand this, like, let's break it down by ethnicity at the college level. And so you see here in this like red dotted line that APIs, when treated as a monolith, have a higher percentage that have bachelor's degree when compared to the US average, which is depicted by the gray dotted line. However, when we disaggregate the data, we see that the majority of the Southeast Asians, as highlighted in this red outline box, that they fall below the US average for college attainment. And so we see that when we disaggregate this data, that there is a disparity among various Southeast Asian groups for college attainment. And so because I am a current PhD student, my natural inclination was the next ask, what about at the PhD level? And so does this disparity still exist? And specifically, I want to draw your attention to this table, specifically at the PhD column for all. We see that at the row of NHW, which stands for non-Hispanic white, that the baseline of people in the US who have a PhD is 1%. But then, as highlighted in the yellow, these various Southeast Asian groups, we see that they fall below the 1%, and some as little as in the Cambodian and Laotian group that it is 0.1%. Sorry, there we go. And further, so this disparity becomes even more evident at the PhD level, as 87.7% of Asian Americans with PhD actually belong to the Chinese, Indian, Korean, or Japanese groups. And so, how is SEER aiming to address this? This is an enormous problem. It can be addressed from many different angles. And though I'd like to do it all, as we have seen from other SAi Fellows, we can't save the world in one go. And so my first step in trying to tackle this problem is to do it from a manageable goal is by, getting the dialogue started. And my first step in this is a project called the Voices of Southeast Asian Researchers. And what that is I have started to compile a list of Southeast Asian researchers. So far, I have found at least 30, and I am aiming to interview them. And so I've formulated questions that asked them about what are they researching? How did they get to where they are in their career? What challenges have they faced as a Southeast Asian? And what is being Southeast Asian mean to them? What are challenges that they see within the Southeast Asian community in terms of education attainment? And so I am using these interviews to, assess their perspective as a Southeast Asian and to not only highlight these magnificent people, but to also better understand what challenges exist within the Southeast Asian community, both as researchers and as a general Southeast Asian. And so I've contacted these researchers and hoping to be able to start conducting these interviews. And so my next steps is to continue growing the list of researchers. This is actually turned out to be more of a daunting task than I realized, but I am hoping that as I start conducting interviews that, connections will lead to one another. And then as I conduct these interviews, I'll transcribe them. And my goal is to publish them online in a website format so that people will be able to see the representation of Southeast Asians in research. And so I want to zoom out and pretty much describe my vision for SEER because I do want to do it all, but I know that, one step at a time. And so my overall vision for SEER is to kind of create this one-stop shop of an online repository. And one arm of this repository is, my first aim of what I'm doing right now is to highlight Southeast Asian researchers at all levels, professors, postdocs, grad students, postbacs, undergrads, high school level, and from all different sectors as well, not just academia, but also industry, nonprofit, government. And that way, my hope is that this will help to promote mentor-mentee relationships, collaborations, and so on. And the second arm of SEER is that I would like it to be a platform for the Southeast Asian community to be able to share opportunities and resources to things, say, like job listings, like internships. And so the third arm is a little bit more of a bigger undertaking, but I would like it to eventually, from these networks that I am creating, that we'll be able to create translated resources. We have talked or we have touched upon from other SAi Fellows about, how the language of science is English, although that is not the language in which everyone speaks or even learns first. And so this is a big challenge in terms of how science is communicated and how it is accessible. And our goal in conducting research is to be able to generalize it and to communicate it. And so if all of our research is in English, and if it is not accessible to everyone, then are we really, what is the purpose of what we are doing? And so I would like SEER to eventually be able to have a network that we can translate research articles so that it is more digestible and that it reaches a broader audience, especially targeting the Southeast Asian community. I also want it to be able to create study materials for recruitment because within the psychology field, my experience has been that we normally just recruit from English-speaking populations. And so then it also speaks to the generalizability of research. Are we able to actually make these claims if we're only targeting this one population? And then the last portion of this creating of translated resources is more on like a personal level, and it is kind of stems from why SEER kind of like became a project that I aim to pursue, is because in my experience of pursuing a PhD, I have encountered other Southeast Asian Americans who are having this disconnect between being able to talk to their families or loved ones about like what they're doing, because we don't necessarily have this language in terms of, you know, the jargon of academia or the jargon of research to be able to explain. You know, the best that I have been able to come with in talking to my family is that, you know, I am pursuing this degree to become a doctor, but not that kind of doctor. I'm becoming the other kind of doctor. And so eventually I would like to be able to, you know, have this online repository that has this kind of like glossary, you know, resource in which other people who are experiencing similar disconnects with being able to communicate what they're doing, to be able to use it and, you know, access it so that they can be able to have the support that they are looking for throughout this pursuit in their careers. And so why does this matter? And I just want to drive home the point that, you know, one of my mantras is that representation matters. And so SEER aims to increase the awareness of the presence of Southeast Asian researchers and their scholarly work. SEER also aims to bridge together two entities, the research community and the Southeast Asian community, not only in like a mentorship sense, but also, you know, for our loved ones to be able to better understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, and like how what we're researching aims to better our lives in general. And then in the research sense, like down the line, I would like SEER to aim to address the psychology's weird problem, which is, you know, research that is focused mainly on Western educated, industrialized, rich democratic populations. And again, SEER, you know, is kind of just like chipping away at this, but this is a huge problem within the psychology research realm. And so with that, I would like to say that it takes a village. And so I would like to thank everyone at SAi, all the fellows, but especially Fanuel and my mentor Jessica and Brittany, who encouraged me to even apply, especially because when I had started this 10 weeks ago, it was just an idea where I wanted to do everything, and to be able to have the opportunity to really like focus and hone in on like what are the first steps in the long-term goals and how to actually achieve it. And then I would like to honor my roots and thank my previous mentors like Khan, Ivy, Sue, and Pitsame from the Center for Asian American Studies at UMass Lowell, where without them, I don't think I would be here in terms of like, you know, pursuing a PhD, because honestly, when I started undergrad, I had no idea what a PhD was. And so I actually have a lot of homage to them. And then lastly, I just want to thank all of you for attending and listening in. And I just want to leave you with one last message, as this is a census year. And it's a quote by Sarah Wynn, and it reads, "The Southeast Asian American community needs an accurate count as we are included in conversations that shift perceptions and build structural change." And with that, I just want to say thank you again, and I welcome any questions, comments, suggestions. My email is sltran@umich.edu if you want to follow up with anything. And yeah, just want to say thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Selena. Did I get that right? Maybe I missed this. The website is out there yet or not yet?
No, not
okay.
yet. That is in the works.
That's in the
Good
works.
question,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, and that's something that's for all our fellows. This engagement continues as they do updates. We'll be keeping in touch with them and sharing that information as it becomes available. Let's see, are there any questions before we get to our last presenter? I think this is great. I think that website will be key to, you know, for all the different initiatives you're going to be building, whether it's the Voices project, right, and other ones, storing it, and then connecting with existing platforms that are already sort of connecting voices as well. That's something that we've been doing a lot of, in making these connections between people, as I mentioned earlier. So that is very much needed on that. Okay, Selena, thank you so much. Last but not least, Sarah, you are up next, and I want to say thank you so much for being so patient, hanging out there. And so you are going to be wrapping us up for the C4 demo. So let me give you co-hosting powers, shall we say. Okay. All right, Sarah, so you have the floor.
Wonderful, thank you. Just get set up here. Move things around so I can actually see the buttons I need.
And a quick note there, Sarah was one of my mentees. Sarah, you take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, Fanuel. Hopefully the captions can start coming through, so anyone that needs to see those can. So thank you all so much for sticking around and all the way till the end. And it's been really great to see everyone else's presentations and see all of the awesome work that you've been doing. Thanks so much to Fanuel for all of the mentorship that you have given me in developing the PhD Princess into something much bigger than I had originally anticipated when I came into the program. But I'm going to start off with a little bit about me. So I am currently a PhD candidate in learning sciences, which is a field that combines cognitive psychology, sociology, and design to try and examine learning in all different contexts. And I'm in my 6th year and hopefully finishing up next February. But in the past, I have been a middle school and high school educator, and some of the struggles that I had as an educator in trying to find resources and learning what are good practices for teaching is really what motivated me to study learning sciences. And it's also informing the project of the PhD Princess. I have also interned in a variety of ed tech companies, and I've seen struggles of connecting research and doing user research in a company and industry space and how that differs from academic research, and trying to connect the academic research with actual products that are getting to students and parents and teachers. And then I've also been doing a lot of science communication, mostly through social media, and had the chance to work at Discover Magazine last summer. So I've learned a lot about how to communicate science in very journalistic ways, but I have found that not a lot of education research is being communicated in these ways. It's a lot more of more traditional STEM field, so that's something that I'm really passionate about. And then lastly, I am a huge Disney fan, and that has really kind of shaped a big part of the PhD Princess project. So the PhD Princess project aims to solve this problem of parents and teachers that are struggling to connect STEM content and skills to pre-K through 12 students' interest in pop culture. Disney is a huge multi-billion-dollar brand, and so are many other aspects of pop culture, and lots of parents and teachers and kids are really interested in it, but maybe only look at it for the storytelling and like English literacy practices, and not as much for the actual STEM content. And there are a couple of organizations that are trying to solve this problem as well. There's something called the Pop Culture Classroom that's located in Denver, that kind of started in graphic novels and really try and connect literacy practices with pop culture, and are reaching out to educators, but they aren't doing as much of the STEM side. And then Cosplay for Science is an organization that I have partnered with before, and it has scientists doing science communication and teaching kids and the public about science through pop culture. So we'll kind of dress up in different costumes as characters from all of these different pop culture properties and try and communicate science about that. But they don't necessarily have all of the education and learning research training as I do, and people in learning sciences do, but working with them has been a really great opportunity to try and do that and start turning some wheels and seeing what PhD Princess could be. So with this problem in mind, the PhD Princess is planning to create high quality educational materials and trainings to empower pre-K through 12 science educators, so this is both parents and teachers, to leverage students' interest in pop culture and to eventually increase their engagement in STEM. So how do I plan to achieve this goal? It's kind of in multi-pronged approach. So first of all, I've been working on making lesson plans and using all of my expertise from being an educator and using teaching and learning research to make lesson plans primarily targeted for middle school age groups and above, that are really active learning opportunities, very student-driven, student interest-driven, giving lots of freedom for them to create things while also learning science content. I'm imbuing my own science communication expertise into this to try and communicate some science topics in ways that are appropriate for middle school age levels, because a lot of existing materials are either too young or too advanced. And then I'm also planning on making some educational videos, again, to cater primarily to this middle school audience, because the videos aren't necessarily targeted for them. And I really just want to make videos that are perfectly doing what I need them to do for the lesson plans that I'm creating. And then beyond lesson plans, I want to create activity kits so that it has some materials and students and teachers and parents can have the materials to do the lesson plans and get that all in one. And that's an existing model that lots of other companies and nonprofits have used. So I'm still working on trying to figure out how to make that model work for PhD Princess. And then the trainings aspect is going to share the latest in teaching and learning research. I'm planning on doing this both in person when we can eventually and virtually, where teachers can collaborate with each other and especially homeschooling parents learn like what is good teaching. And then I'm also planning to start a email newsletter that gives a lot of educational tips in a much more informal and short form way that's not a big production that might require school district intervention to kind of gather a group of teachers together. And then I'm also planning to do a lot of community building. I'm currently on Instagram and I've researched how teachers are using Instagram. There's a lot of teachers and homeschooling parents that use a lot of hashtags, and I've done a lot of research into what hashtags they're using so I can try and reach them. And there's a lot of homeschooling parents and teachers that are in Facebook groups. So I have been kind of inserting myself into some of these Facebook groups. There's Disney homeschooling Facebook groups specifically. So trying to engage with those parents and share teaching and learning information with my own posts and by answering their own questions in these different groups. But I'm planning on creating my own Facebook group in the future as well, so that people who are using materials from the PhD Princess can work together, ask questions, and get feedback directly from me. And then I want to share some of the progress that I have already made. So I've done quite a bit of user research, interviewing and surveying over 15 parents who are very interested in these products. They have a Disney focus or passion, and they also have kids of a variety of ages. And some of the things that we've learned suggest that the PhD Princess materials are moving in the right direction and serving a need that these parents have. So one quote that I've gotten is that parents are worried that they're not teaching their kids as well as someone else could be. Like they are not as confident in their teaching abilities and what they know about teaching to be able to be proud of themselves and feel like they're doing a good enough job. And so especially the trainings and the newsletter would really help with addressing this parent's need. And then some parents are really trying to figure out how to align their kids' interests and with kind of standards and what needs to be covered. So our lesson plans have all of the standards that they cover included really upfront so that teachers and parents know what they're trying to cover and how the lesson plans satisfy that. But then also their kids might be interested in Star Wars or Disney princesses, and how do they get them to care about school related things when they're interested in just pop culture. And then especially about the activity kits, I've had parents have a lot of comments about those kinds of things because they have experience with them and they want things that don't need a lot of prep or a lot of craft type stuff that eventually needs to be thrown out. So trying to figure out how to adapt lesson plans into things that and find materials that they are cost effective for me to create, as well as aren't just going to be trash afterwards and are a little bit more sustainable than existing products. And then one of the biggest accomplishments that I've done in these past 10 weeks is that I have made my first lesson plan available. It's on my website, phdprincess.com, and it focuses on Imagineering Pandora and the science of bioluminescence and how Disney Imagineers, who kind of create everything in the theme parks, have approximated some bioluminescence because it's not something that's typically found in land creatures as it might be in the Avatar movie. So kids, it's a very project-based lesson plan where they do a lot of explorations, and I'm trying to adapt this into an activity kit that uses like a UV blacklight as well as some other glow-in-the-dark materials so they can test and design their own kind of Pandora at home. And I have given this to a couple of parents and they've had some positive feedback so far. And I'm still reworking it to try and make it a little bit less like school because I think kids right now are really drained by distance learning. So just reworking some of the aspects of the lesson plan to make it more engaging for kids who don't want to be on Google Docs any more than they have to. And then as in terms of the community building aspect, my Instagram account, the PhD Princess, has almost 1,400 followers. So feel free to join in on the fun. And I've shared things like learning styles are a myth. It's one of the main myth busting things that I want to do. And these are kinds of the principles that I might teach in a training course, and just connecting lots of different Disney things like mice and a lot of the animals that are at Disney World and different movie properties, as well as highlighting Disney people that work in STEM to try and serve as role models that people might have never heard of because they're more familiar with the characters and the people behind them. And so some of my next steps are to continue growing, making more lesson plans, starting the newsletter, figuring out the cost-effective ways to make these activity kits. I've gotten good feedback from other people that have done activity kits and of how to go about that. So I'm working through that currently, and just growing the community more, as well as really figuring out the funding structure that I am going to work with. So I'm very, very grateful to SAi for the funding that has allowed me to make my website and buy some preliminary materials for activity kits. But I really want to make these lesson plans as close to freely available as possible, because based on research with teachers and parents, that they'd rather have something that's available for free than something they'd pay for. So trying to figure out either a Patreon or some other funding structure that I can get funding from elsewhere to make these materials available so that teachers can feel confident in what they're teaching and how they're teaching, and to really get to those kids loving STEM and envisioning themselves being able to do it. So thank you so much for listening, and I'm happy to take collaborations. If you have science that you think could connect to Disney, or you want to figure out how it could connect to Disney or some other aspect of pop culture, I love talking about that. So get in touch with me on Instagram or through email. And yeah, thank you so much for listening.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Sarah, any questions at all for our panelists? And if all our panelists can please, if you're able to enable your video, I would like to take a photo of us all, a group photo. We made it to the end, yay. This has been fantastic. So before we get into that, let's see here.
I see Pete had a question about the transcription software, and it's just embedded in Google Slides. If you just turn on the closed captioning button, Google Slides does it automatically. And I think there's a way to do that in PowerPoint as well, but Google Slides makes it really easy.
Great, 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 great. Yeah, let's see if there are any other questions in the chat. I think, yeah, this is so cool, yay. Okay, I think DJ had escaped us. Anyway, that's okay. We'll have a photo of all you want. So smile away. Gonna snap a photo. Ubi, before I forget. Oops, Ubi, are you there? Okay, she might have disabled the video. Okay, but anyway, I will snap away. Smile. So with that, I would like to thank you all so much for making this, I think, a successful fourth cohort demo day. we say 4, but this is really the first, like this size, shall we say, and the formality of it has been an iterative process that we've been building from the beginning. And so this would not have been possible without the fellows' help, prior fellows, the new fellows that are now joining the alumni ranks, and all the mentors out there. We continue to improve and build. And I think I'm super excited to just see what comes next of all of you. These projects are exciting, and our goal is to make sure they are successful and they last, right? So your engagement with us does not end here. You'll always have a place in our house. So you're always welcome to give talks and tell us what's going on. And with that, I did promise a kind of an end announcement or so. So that is actually, yes, the 5th cohort, the 5th one will be, the application for it will be launching December 1. And so that is the news for that. And that will launch, run from March through to May, June. So we'll get working on that, and we'll get the feedback of all these wonderful fellows right now, and then make some changes and iterations, and then build on that. And that's the key thing for us, is that improvement. The logic model allows you to stay on your toes. What's working? What are you trying to do? What are the users telling me, right? Hopefully you guys remember that for sure. The logic model is there to use, but it's not a static thing. It's a continually changing platform. And with that, thank you so much for taking a little chunk of your Saturday to be with us today. To all the audience out there, thank you. To the fellows, thank you so much. And with that, that is the conclusion of the program.